What's up, everybody? Midjourney Fast Hours podcast. Drew Brucker, Rory Flynn, Tim Simmons?
Ooh.
Question mark? Yeah, legends only. We've got a guest here today. Tim has joined us. Thanks, Tim, for joining us, man. We're big fans. Obviously, you have, I think YouTube's your primary channel, right?
It is,
that
yeah.
correct? Mm-hmm. I mean, you've just been, you've got a great audience there, 130,000 subscribers, which just sounds like an amazing feat. And I just know your content from, you covering sort of like the breadth of some of these Gen AI creative tools and so forth. And I think you do a really good job of covering them. It's very relatable. So we're very happy to have you here. Just to kind of kick things off, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them a little bit about you if they're not familiar, and maybe just give us like a taste of how you kind of got into, the Gen AI space. What was your sort of appetizer in there?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Tim. I have a channel on YouTube called Theoretically Media, where I cover AI tools. Generally, though, I will always cover things from like the creative perspective. I tend to lean towards imagery, video, and audio. So my running joke is that if it goes in your eyes, ears, or eyes or ears, I guess. There's no like smell AI yet. But when there is, when we get AI scratchy sniff all over it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've been at it for, I guess the November of 22, I guess is kind of when everything really kind of started to take off on the channel. So yeah, that's always been my take on it. Is always, from the perspective of creative people using these tools and figuring out creative ways to use them.
Yeah, man. I remember probably. I mean, it's good that that's that November 22 timeframe. That's probably the sweetest spot.
Yeah,
of getting
it's
into
like the
game.
golden age.
Yeah. But I remember coming across some of your videos because I remember looking on YouTube and not finding. So it was like a nice, refreshing space. Like early, now it's just like everyone's got it, right? Faceless channels, whatever. But back then, it felt like a place to hang out every once in a while, even if potentially wasn't talking about something that I was like working on at the time or using. I was just like, here's a place to like hang out. Yeah. So number one, thank you for that. That was cool. It. Yeah. It was good to find. But two, I also want to thank you for one thing that like I used for, I don't know, every single carousel or piece of content I made for about a year, which was I think it was Insight Face, the Insight Face plugin for Discord back in the day. That thing was like, I saw that on your channel. I was like, gotta do this right now. Yeah. That one was so fun.
Gold. Yeah, that thing was gold. That was back in the day too, when it was a Discord bot, right? That was Midjourney Discord only, and then you could plug it in. Yeah, that was such a game changer when that was first released. It was huge. Like and since then we've had a million other face swappers. Weirdly enough, I still actually use Insight Face Swapper through Pinokio. So that's actually one of my go-tos for face swapping. So yeah,
interesting. How did we get here? What's the background? Like how do we end up talking about AI altogether here? Yeah,
I logged in. So where do I start on that? So I worked in Hollywood for, I would say like 16 years. I did all kinds of jobs throughout that time. I worked in studios. I worked on productions. Literally like anything that you can. I once, drove for Michael Bay. Not literally drove him. I just ran errands for him. I mean, all kinds of gigs. I guess my primary bread and butter there became doing behind the scenes content for DVDs. If you guys remember that era of like making
the cool stuff.
That stuff. So yeah, I mean that was always my favorite thing. So yeah, I got to make a bunch of documentaries, like hang out on sets, talk to the famouses, and interview the actors and the writers and directors, and it was pretty cool. So, I got a lot of like on-set experience, but sort of from a fly-on-the-wall perspective, which was a great way to learn how all of it works, right? It's a grind, man. That business is a grind. And at some point, like the wife and I had kids, I was still working 16 hours or whatever a day. And, we kind of called it at some point. So I ended up moving back east. picking up a teaching gig for a little while. I was just teaching kids how to, shoot movies, edit in Premiere, Photoshop, that kind of stuff. And then as a total side note, so the teaching thing, like, I did that for a few years. I have a ton of respect for teachers because I'm not really a teacher. I'm just a guy that, like, they were like, hey, you seem to know how to do this stuff. Like, we got a job. And I'm like, I can't find any other jobs right now. So sure, I guess I'll do that. And it was really fun and rewarding. But when you go through that cycle of like taking a kid from, from the beginning to the end, and then you just have to turn around and do it all over again. Like, you're just like, oh, I just gave that kid all this knowledge. Now I got to go back to a bunch of imbeciles. Like, start the whole thing over again. I say imbeciles lovingly.
Nice little context switch there where you go from, okay, we've almost mastered it. Now let's start at that baby step one again.
Again, yeah. And that's, look, I mean, all respect in the world to that field, because that's hard. And that's when I realized that, like, I can't really do this. That happened to dovetail right around the time that we, again, around November 2022, when I want to say that Midjourney had just hit version 4. And the other big thing that kind of happened for me was that, guitars on the walls and all of that stuff. But the first iteration of, I think it was called Riff Fusion. It was like Stable Diffusion Audio that had just come out. And it was like super like weird and wonky and, nowhere near the level of like, Suno or Udio or anything that we have now. But there was just enough there where I was just like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And then just kind of looking ahead to what was going to be 2023, I'm like, oh, okay. No, everything is going to change. Everything's going to change. The thumbnail title that I always get in trouble for.
Were you thinking about this stuff more from like a personal interest, curiosity standpoint? Or like, were you already kind of of the mindset of like, I feel like this is maybe what I should be involved in from more of a financial or career standpoint?
Oh no. Initially it was just straight up like, this is fun. Like, this is so much fun. Like, do you guys know that we can do this? Yeah. That was really what the channel was about, was just like, I would talk to people, outside that weren't following the space and just like constantly showing them stuff on my phone. Just like, do you know we can do this now? Like, and I think that early era too was like, it was filled with such like wonder and possibility, and it still is to this day, in my opinion.
Yeah,
a little bit of like crankiness and saltiness that's starting to seep into the edges, I think, because
it's a little bit.
I mean, obviously there's been a lot of negativity surrounding AI that is kind of coming in, but I mean that early era when it was Will Smith eating spaghetti and
yes,
and whatever avocado chairs generated in DALL-E. I mean, like that stuff was just like, it was so wondrous. I mean, and it still is. Look, I mean, I know that, again, like I just posted some videos on Sora, and everyone, look, you can get salty about the price all you want or anything, but it's still like this is magic. Like, this is kind of magical. So,
truly.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was making the reference the other day to, it's kind of like AI is like the evolution of like a camera too. Like it was, you had your solid cameras, right? They get better as they go along. The quality gets better, X, Y, Z. Then you get like the camcorder, like the 90s, and you go back and look at the footage from like your family gatherings in the 90s, and you're like, you remember them fondly, but the camera is just so not great. And then fast forward to today, we can have like a GoPro that's the size of like a bean, and it takes better quality. But like it seems to be like it's a very similar progression, and I think the funny thing is like it just feels like, that's where everyone started. Like that camcorder gave like a bunch of different, let's just say independent filmmakers an opportunity to like really get a start and like start creating. I feel like it's the same thing with this stuff. Does that sentiment still like resonate with people to you? Like, are you seeing that?
I think so. Early on, maybe around like Gen 2, around when Runway introduced Gen 2, and we kind of came out of that Gen 2 was text to video and image to video, I want to say. And I remember saying at that time, like, it's like, look, this is like, it's like we're in the late 1800s, and like the Lumiere brothers just handed everyone a camera. You know what I mean? It's like, this thing wasn't here a minute ago, now it is. but now everyone can have this thing, and go find out what it does. So completely and totally, and I think that there are definitely going to be eras of again, the space is moving so quickly that what was it last year's Super Bowl when we had the whole run of AI commercials? There was the Minions
Jesus.
on. Yeah, well, there was that one. Yeah,
Yeah, that one. Remember that one?
There was that as well.
Yeah.
But there was also in that as well. There was also the Minions dogging on AI generated. There was the beer commercial that was pretty early on in the Gen AI days too. It was really morphy and crazy, and they were obviously dogging on that, but that was still as a Super Bowl ad. Was that $7 million or whatever per minute or whatever it costs? It's okay, you might be dogging on it, but you used it, and that opened up the door for AI commercials essentially. And cut to today, where we have a Coke commercial that is that is once again controversial, but it's out there. So
definitely push the boundaries with that one. I think that one sent the shockwave. Yes, you can use it commercially. It's here regardless. And then you saw the emotional testing, and people were like, "We like it. We don't care. It makes us feel something." So, I think a lot of agencies had a little bit of a shock to the system the last 100%. Couple weeks, where they're like, "Oh,
yeah." And I'll say, even with even once we hit those Super Bowl spots where again they were dogging on AI generated video, it's it doesn't matter because it was used and it's only going to get better. And that was just a weird litmus test of oh, we got away with the agencies. I'm sure were we got away with it. No one came after us because we started it off as kind of insulting it. You know what I mean? It's a joke. Haha. You can't get mad at it. And then, cut to Coke today. And a bunch of people apparently got mad at it. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter.
I mean, because Coke made that commercial doesn't mean I'm going to stop drinking Coke if I was a Coke drinker.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, there was a Good Morning America segment on it where I think they were kind of coming at it from a negative approach. If you look on YouTube, it has something 7 million views or whatever. That's free advertising for Coke.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They don't understand the media apparently doesn't understand earned media impressions there, where it's again, that good or bad, it doesn't matter. It went viral as hell, and whatever they spent on it, you're getting return on it in whatever metric they're measuring it by, because it's crazy. But did you being in the Hollywood space, did anyone have you talked to anyone about it? Is anyone that's absolute crap, that's awesome, whatever? What's the general litmus test there?
I mean, I think it's 50-50 still. I think it's
okay.
I talked to a lot of, especially earlier in I was talking to a lot of the guys that were first coming not after me, but the guys that were first inquiring to me were more of the post-production houses, the big Technicolor-y kind of I don't want to say them specifically, but the companies that work for them, where it's hey, how do we automate green screen removal, or wire removal, or Henry Cavill's mustache when that happened in Superman. So there was a lot of people asking questions about that. I would show them the tools that were available at the time, and of course, nothing is the frustration there. I think a lot of times is that whole production pipeline is a finely tuned giant machine that cannot move flexibly and cannot change and adapt very quickly. It's very rigid in terms of what codec you're using, what not even aspect ratios, but just everything about your file format to what you shot it on. Everything has to be very segmented and to the letter. And so a lot where you're, a lot of times if you're just oh, here's here, I did this thing in Runway. They're well, it's not 8K.
Yeah.
We can't show this in a theater. It's well, I mean, you can. There's ways to. Those guys are wizards. They can work that footage up if they want it. But it doesn't. Yeah. Again, that's not going to be a cost savings thing for them. That's just going to end up costing them more money. So, so a lot of those early talks were sort of they were interested, they were curious, but we weren't really at an eye-to-eye point yet. On the creative side, I think that there was a lot more interest. There's definitely, there's so many people that have scripts in development hell that, were just like years, like I got option for, $2 10 years ago, and they still own it, and it's never getting made. And it's like, well, that sucks. Like, it's like, well, I got this new script. Can I make this in AI yet? I'm like, yeah, kind of. No, not yet. But that's when definitely that era of like sci-fi trailers, like we're being flooded with those, like people just turning slowly at camera and sci-fi dystopia behind them. There was a lot of that during that era. And I think that the people that stuck with it are interested. They're still curious about it, and the naysayers are still going to be the naysayers. So, but I think we're getting closer to kind of coming to a point soon. So,
Definitely, I think it's sort of interesting to see the sort of adoption curve. Number one, like I remember initially, like we're going to pivot probably to Midjourney here in a second, but just like when posting about Midjourney, I'm sure you probably got the same thing. It was initially like graphic designers, and they were like "F off," like that was basically like the sentiment. And I'd never seen a quicker flip to where I don't have a single graphic designer anymore. Like that's like that, because they realized it, right? They realized that it wasn't just like I can type into Midjourney and like get my full design, and like a normie can go do this and my job is over. It's like it's another way to, instead of going to a stock site, I can go pull textures, gradients, graphics, mash them all together. I'm a farmer of my own ingredient. I'm a chef, but I'm also the farmer of my own ingredients. So it's like, when they see the light, it's like, okay, this is not, the end of the world, and it's not for anyone. Not any single person can go on here and create like, stuff for Coca-Cola or Powerade or whatever. But did you have any graphic background like that, or was that?
So I mean, in terms of graphic design, I think that probably the closest is that I was kind of like lightly on the outskirts of the comic book industry for a while. I made a couple of independent comic books, worked with artists, know some of that angle of production. I'm not really great at drawing, but and actually, as it turns out, artists really hate that when you kind of give them like, here's thumbnails of what I want. They're just like, screw off. Just like, like, let me.
Same with tattoo artists, man. They are.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like, and I get that. Like that is your domain. You go do that thing. Yeah. So a bit of that, and that's again I think that going through one of the many jobs that I had through the Hollywood career too was doing some stuff with print, like movie posters and Blade 3, by the way.
Awesome.
And not specifically just me. Obviously, there's a huge team, but it's not a good poster. That's death by committee right there. All of those movie posters just to talk out of school, because I don't care. I don't work there anymore. But generally the way that works is they'll hire an ad house to come up with a bunch of concepts. You will see some of the coolest movie posters of all time in that first round, like where they're just doing like insane cool artwork, and you're just like, this poster is going to be awesome. And then it starts going through, the studio squeeze, and everybody has to have their say. And by the time you get to the end of it, you just have like a character against a white background, or a character against texture. It's like, what? They just beat it up to no end. So yeah, some of that stuff as well. So I've done some, I guess, graphic, or at least 2D print stuff before.
It sounds also familiar.
Yeah.
That take the Michelin star meal, turn it into McDonald's. Like,
always, yeah.
That's
but that is one thing,
progression.
especially that's one thing that I always say about Midjourney as well, is that like when you're in that situation, because I'm sure you guys have run into the same thing before. It's like the client, the famous client words of like, I'll know it when I see it. And you're just like, oh, okay,
great.
It's going to be a late night.
Great.
It's going to be a late night. So the one plus side, not one plus, there's many plus sides to Midjourney, but definitely a bonus to that is just like, okay, now, well, here is a curated book that I put together. What do you like in this? Like, circle what you like. And at least we can start to hone in on something. So just as a straight like client management system, Midjourney is
the worst ones are, I trust you to figure it out. You'll oh yeah, and then when I come up with something, you're gonna have a whole idea in your head of exactly what you want, which I wish you would have told me before I spent 8 hours on it, right? So
100%. Yep.
What was like the inflection point for Midjourney when you got in there? Was there like a moment where it's like, I'm just 8 hours in, or like this sort of image just totally caught my eye?
I would say probably when we hit V4.
Okay.
I think that was pretty much. I think V3 was really fascinating to me. I was generating up a lot of interesting textural artwork, I would say, like and it's like, oh my god, I can do this watercolory thing, use it as a album cover to put on Spotify or whatever it was, like. But when we hit V4, which I still love to this day, it's still like, it's super dark and gritty and just weird.
Yes.
And like, yeah, I love V4. V4 is like the ultimate David Lynch movie. It's so good. So yeah, playing around with once that made the jump, and then moving into, I think it was probably like some David Lynch stuff or Del Toro kind of like cinematic styled images, it was like, oh, this is awesome. And then yeah, from there it became like 8 hours of like, can I storyboard out a movie with this? And then of course it was only a hop, skip, and a jump before video started to come into play as well. And then you essentially had, between the two, a movie making machine.
Insane.
And God knows what David's got coming up soon. So I hear video soon. Like, yeah.
With Midjourney, I guess compared to then versus now, have you increased your usage with Midjourney? Has it gone away? What's your, I guess, sentiment about Midjourney right now? And then also, like, how excited are you for 2025 with Midjourney, right? Are you looking forward to anything specifically? Is there something that you're hesitant about? Like, just give us your sort of sense and scope of where Midjourney's at.
Yeah. So Midjourney is still a daily driver for me. I'm in there every day, like doing something. So
Yeah.
I would say it's probably not just by nature of the channel and what I do. I think that it, I spend maybe less time in there than previously, but I mean, again, I'm still in there at least once a day. I think that I think in Midjourney, if that's one way to put it. So like if I'm testing out, say, Flux or Leonardo or any image generator, like my head is, I think my expectation of whatever I'm prompting tends to be, what would I see in Midjourney? And then, and then
100%.
we look at it, and I do try to knock that out of me, because the one thing that I definitely do preach is that, like, they all do different things. Like, it should, I genuinely do not believe that Midjourney is better than Leonardo or better than Flux or, and I don't think that Flux is better than Midjourney. They do different things. And that's actually kind of the fun of all of it as well. And it kind of gives you a broad amount of choices. That said, I mean, anytime that I do a Midjourney video, it feels like coming home to me. So, that's, I still love it. Still use it every day. So, yeah.
You were one of the first channels, I think, that was breaking this stuff down really granular, like each individual part of it, not just like, use this prompt for great, great results. It was like, here's what the weird parameter is. Here's, exactly. So that was, I think it was because there is so much for us to talk about, like, in those spaces. It makes it easier to kind of like focus in. But like, that's the one thing that I'm finding. I try all the other tools. I use them. And it's still like, there's just some X factor that it has, and especially like the level of control, because if I can't get it with something else, typically if I go into Midjourney, I'm like, yeah, I can get that. Like it's is that, are you finding, from a control standpoint, that it's still superior to some of the other tools you're playing with, or is it really like I'm just focusing in on that one aspect, because that's really, I think, where a lot of people, especially here that are listening, like they want control, of everything, but naturally characters, things like that, still tough. But is that what you're seeing, or no?
So there's kind of two sides to that, I guess. Is that the like current modern Midjourney? Okay, well, circling back real quick, one of the things that if I go way off topic, remember to swing me back this way to the main point. But one of the things that I think, especially in early Midjourney, that occurred to me at some point, because we do have a lot of like dashes in there, right? There's sometimes your dashes could end up longer than your actual prompt.
100%.
And then you get into weighting and all of that stuff. I think that going back to like how you think in Midjourney, I think that when you spend a lot of time in there, especially in the older Discord days, it became like this, you were like doing this like hybrid, writing a story and like programming at the same time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it definitely was its own language. And that was that part I think is still I think that in a large way, that is still true even on the website. Although, we have a lot of those features now in widgets. A lot of them are still only accessible via -- commands. Okay, so outside of that, the other thing that I loved about it too is the fact that you could do it on your phone, sitting in line at the grocery store, and you were in Discord.
Yeah.
And it's like,
in relax mode. By the
relax
time I'm
mode,
out of this, by the time I'm out of this line, I'll have these new images.
So in terms of control, I think that the way that I always look at Midjourney is, I'll take it back to comic books. There's if you're not familiar, generally with comic books, there is your cover artist and then your interior artist. And the cover artist is like that's the guy that's supposed to get your attention on the newsstand. Oh, what's going on there? So it's real flashy and it's real intricately detailed. And then generally you'll open up the comic, not always, but usually you'll open up the comic and it's now it's kind of more of the workman style, right? This, now we're into the storytelling part of it. Not to say that you can't get control. I know that David's talked about control and that pose control coming at some point or another. But we've all run to that issue of just I want a character raising their hand, and you
right.
might get that. It's now I want the character reaching into the holster because he's a cowboy and he's about to draw a gun. 50-50 there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can spend some time working on that, but you may or may not get it. I know that he has talked about those controls coming, and then the 3D aspect. I think the orb. I'm sure you're the viewers.
The orb.
Orb.
Secret project.
Yeah. If we start to get there, those actually, funny enough, I think between the two things of the orb and video, I'm actually more excited about 3D controls. And control that than I am, and pose control in Midjourney than I am about video. So that's just me.
Yeah, it's we've personally been a little bit of a complainer the last couple weeks here because we keep it's been V7's on the way for 6 months. It feels like at this point, and it's just it'll be done soon. It'll be done soon. It'll be done soon. It'll be done soon. And we're just dude, just give us something. The editor feature was great. I mean, useful. Not going to say I use it every day all the time, but it's
really?
Nice to have. Yeah, I mean,
sometimes. I think that for me, that's probably, I don't know, man. That's got to be a top 2 or 3 for me.
Are you talking about personally or commercially? If you're doing this for a client, are you using it more for a client or are you doing it more on your own stuff?
Honestly, kind of both, man.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I love the ability, right? We talk about a lot, the symmetrical bias, right? The system has. So just the ability to move out, reposition, your composition. And I would say, yeah, man, I'm probably using it almost on everything I'm working on, dude. Seriously, yeah.
All right.
I had a good hack the other day with the character ref. So I did a video. It was kind of a funny video using Runway's Act 1. Initial images were generated in Midjourney. It was a short film about a hitman doing an interview for a corporate job. Essentially,
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It was 2 characters back and forth. So both those characters were generated in Midjourney. But our hitman had flashbacks to the gag is what real world experience do you have? And it's well, I was in special, I was in the Black Ops, and flashback to him doing something ridiculous. And the gag was that the character was court-martialed in that segment, so you could see ref the character in, but he would be wearing the suit and tie, right? Editor just blacked him out, military dress, and then you had the same character, but now wearing appropriate clothes. So because that is always one frustration of just it's funny because we complain so long about consistent clothes, and then consistent clothes, and you're like, as it turns out, I need a wardrobe change for this guy.
That was always it felt like character reference. If you put in the effort, you can get what you want, but it's effort. It's not just you click a button character, transition, which is I feel like most of the tool.
It's
right? I mean,
always, that's I think all of these tools, Midjourney especially. I think maybe we tend to think about it more in Midjourney just because we're so deeply ingrained in it. But I think that like there's always like a hack and a way to get around it all. Like
Yes.
like one of my favorite things to do, because like you know how like you get a face but it's like it's not quite right, even CREFT, like just go back to your base image again and then run it through a face swapper, you know what I mean, so that you have to do that outside of Midjourney, so there is a ton of that stuff.
Yeah. I still remember the whole character reference. Rory put out this post where he got like 2 different characters in a scene, and that motherfucker had like 20 steps to it.
It was a lot.
Just like, I was like, this is the perfect explanation for a lot of the Midjourney stuff, right? It's like people ask if it's possible. You know, it's like, well, yeah, but like here's the caveat, right?
Oh yeah.
about 2 days worth of pain to get there.
Got that other side of it too, where it's just like, you know, all of that stuff, and then plus I brought it into Photoshop and then spent another 20 hours on it. You know, I mean, that's the, you know, anything can be done. Like it's just, you know, it might take you a while.
Yeah,
like,
can you do it in Tool, right? Like, do you have to jump around? How? Like, I thought that's another great point about the editor too, right? Like, I thought with that new editor feature, you saved yourself some steps, right? Because you didn't necessarily have to zoom out and erase, you know, or reposition things or change aspect. You could do it all in one go, right? So like for a while you had to like piece that together. And I can't even tell you probably how many times I've lost track of like something I was working on, and then I generated other things at the same time. My ADHD got the best of me, and I probably never saw it again, you know? Like
Left an editor.
yeah, seriously. I mean,
The other good thing about that was matching the aesthetic. I think that was probably the biggest hurdle between like Midjourney and then Photoshop. Like if you want to do a big piece of an image and like do it, it was like Photoshop couldn't necessarily match the same aesthetic if you're doing something a little bit more, you know, like Midjourney-ish.
Yeah.
And then it was like, bang! Now we can match that. Like that's what I like the most.
You know, in terms of we were just talking about it, in terms of pose control too, like there's retexture that we have now too. So I mean, you could literally grab your phone, take a reference photo of yourself in the pose that you're looking for, and then retexture from there. So it's a matter of like, and that's something that I think a lot of times on the AI side of things, that's another part. I mean, I'm very bullish on video to video as well. Not a lot of some of the audience, there's definitely a portion of the audience that is like not necessarily keen on that because it requires effort. And I'm like,
yes,
well, listen, you may have to get up and you may have to actually physically do things. I don't think that prompting is ultimately going to be the future of all of this. I think that, you know, it's still it's still going to require visual input at some point or another. Like we're gonna hit that point of just like, you know, maybe you are talking to an LLM and it's like, you know, that cowboy pose, like in that scene from Quick and the Dead, and like let me show you that scene. It may be part of it, but yeah, I mean for sure that prompting is never going to fully get you exactly what you're looking for. But there's also a part of me that always says, maybe that's okay as well. Going back to like working with comic book artists where I was like, I drew the thing, you know, I drew thumbnails of like what I wanted in my script. And they were like, screw you, buddy. That's my job. Like, so there is a part of me that's like, that's actually Midjourney's job too, is to say, screw you, I'm handling this. You know what I mean? Like, I want to do my interpretation of it. So I know I'm like anthropomorphizing. How do I say that? Humanizing. I know I'm humanizing Midjourney.
there you go.
You know, at the same
Hey, you know what? It's like a curse on this show. If you start
So
to
bad.
get anything with, you know, 4 syllables or more, you're screwed. I mean, you're done.
Yeah.
So
It's you know, it's also I like that though. Like I like the challenge of trying to figure it out, because more like 80% of the time you do. If you like, you know, when it's not perfect and doesn't just listen to you, it's like, then you find out ways to do other things, and then that translates. So, you know, it's kind of been like a blessing and a curse having this, like starting with this stuff really raw. And
Well
it's like,
said. Yeah.
it's not giving me what I want. How do I get it? Well, you know, if you're a naturally curious person, there's no end.
well,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Rory and I talk about this a lot too. Like the idea that if there are no problems presented to you, you're not forced to, you know, try to work up with these creative solutions. So it's another way to flex creativity too, in a different way. Now that some of this other creative, I guess the creative functionalities have been taken away somewhat in some of the LLM stuff. So, you know, I think it's just a different way to think, but it's healthy, right? Because you start to, you know, kind of like really understand the tool at a deep, deep level. I think for me, like that was super important too. Like having multiple ways to potentially get to the same end outcome, right? Like, hey, this way isn't going to work for this. Okay, now I know that, but I already have 2 or 3 other ways in mind that I'm going to try too. So I thought that was like a key piece, especially early on with the tech.
I think it's important to not get creatively tunnel visioned into like I want this thing, and then you're not paying attention to all of the other variations that that it's providing you. Where if you were to maybe take a look at that, that might springboard an idea to do something else or head in a different direction. So that is that part of like I don't know, wonder numbness. I think that we are universally going through at the tail end here of this year. I think we need to reset that at some point or another. Just because again, like yes, ultimate control is important, but not losing sight of the fact that like there are like literally an infinite amount of creative options as well. Like yeah.
Even just with the parameters itself, I think I calculated it one time and we were at like 1 trillion potential combinations or something like that with all the, if you tried to run all of them in different variations, I did some nerd stuff like that where it was like, let's just see, this would probably be a great tweet, but it wasn't a great tweet. It got like 1 like, and I was like, wow, I've really spent 5 minutes doing that on ChatGPT, and that's pretty bad.
That is funny though. That come to think of it, yeah, because you're right. Because if it was like just a weird between like 0 and 1,000, and then plus stylized between whatever. The permutations are that's a lot. Of
SREF codes now.
SREF codes,
add those in the mix.
Personalization with stylization.
I broke my personalization by doing too many. I think I did like 2,000. I read that wrong and thought that the initial one to get the P code I think was you had to do 200. I read that as 2,000 for some reason, so I just kept like going like and hammering it, and then so for a little while there, my personalization code was like it was just cinematic green. It was like no, I could not get out of that, so I had to go through and like do
multiple personalization codes.
That is true.
Sometime soon. It was supposed to be yesterday. Is it today? Is it this weekend? Is it next week? I don't know.
I have not gotten the chance to dive too deeply into patchwork, just because this has been Sora week. How have you guys found that so far?
Great question. Go ahead, Rory.
Did you play around with it? I was on it today for a little bit. It was like, to me, there was so many different options in there that I just started like generate. Like, I just started with one character. I just started playing with the character, and I'm like, okay, let's build out this canvas. And then it was when it came to like linking and the portals and everything else, and I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity to figure this out. I need like a day to figure this all out. Were you on the office hours the other day listening live?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got about midway through the demo, I had to bounce out, but like I was like, okay, I get this. All right, at least I thought I got it. And then this morning I jumped in. I'm just like, maybe, yeah. Again, same thing. I don't think it's like this does not seem to be something that you're going to pick up in 5 minutes. It seems to be like a day.
I heard collaborative world building, and I just imagined something totally different.
Yeah.
And then that demo seemed boy, there's a lot to cover there. You know what I mean? And that guy was just, I thought he was doing a good job, but at the same time, like he's trying to cover too much. I mean, he was just rushing through it. I don't know how anybody could have picked up on that, but I haven't played with it just yet. I did try to get on that same day later in the day, and the link was crashed. So I don't know. It just to me, I didn't see anything that was like.
Yeah, you have to log in via your Google account, which has to be tied to your Discord, and I don't know. So I had a little bit of an issue logging in. It eventually did let me in. I get it. Like it's like I think that because it was sort of pitched as the storytelling team. That's what we had heard it as leading in. I think it's there. It's just it's not probably what we had expected at first. So it may take a little diving in to figure out sort of how they were calling the storytelling, world building, all of that stuff, and how it works. I think it's just going to take a little bit for us to figure out exactly where our best use cases are for it and how it actually genuinely works. So,
it just felt to me personally. Like I've probably said this a few times on the podcast, but I've just been really a fan of how Runway has released all the new Gen 3 products, where it's like every week they give you like a little bite where
Friday they
first it
screw me
was
over.
right,
That's the
and it's
deal.
just like thanks guys.
Yeah,
But it's like it's easy to pick up and figure out the uses for it when you have like one new thing to work on each week. This seemed like a whole new environment, and I was
Yes.
like, oh god.
I would agree
Like,
with that. Yeah.
granted, for us who use this stuff every day, it's a little bit confusing. Someone who's just jumping in there, who's maybe been on Midjourney for a month or two, like, how are they gonna figure that out?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
maybe they figured it out better than us because it's new, but it's that's just I think David asked that, right? It's like, would you rather have like these bigger, more grand updates, or would you rather have like these smaller ones? I mean, I'm of the opinion smaller ones because it's just nice to learn stuff in that fashion. Do you feel the same way, or is that kind of like?
Yeah, I mean, well, the two sides to that is that I think that I like I do miss like that weekly. I mean, again, this is going back, to that older style of like, we just put, we just came up with like dash whatever, like I can't remember, like
Weird.
or yeah, mutations. Remember that, or permutations, like
Best feature.
yeah, like just
So great.
like I do miss that era of just like, oh, that's kind of interesting and neat. I think it's going to be a mixture. Like he was talking the other day about how I think they're moving more into a research lab like kind of area. So we may be just seeing a lot more smaller and bigger experiments like this. And look, if this doesn't take, then cool. Like they gave it a shot. It was something interesting. It'll probably still sit there. If it does take and morphs into something else, I think a lot of times with them it'll be like it doesn't take. Some power users will still use it. Some aspects of it might merge into something else. So we'll see. So yeah.
It's an interesting idea, though. Look, I like there was a couple questions which I had, which I was glad people asked, which was, could you flip the style of the entire board with
Right.
one SREF code? I'm like, that's what I was hoping. And then when
Yeah.
they said no, but I was like, I hope you take that no, because that would be great. That'd change everything.
Yeah.
Like, that's a totally different ball game, right? If you built this whole storyboard out and you could just one click,
One
zing,
click and just
change
like,
it.
yeah. The
Yeah.
other side of it too is
Oh,
I think
I'd like that.
People are what I've noticed at least is that people tend to they get a little intimidated and weirded out by what we're calling the AI murder board, like the whole canvas thing. I mean, because it looks like
Yeah.
it looks like you're a detective chasing a serial killer with these things. So
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
I get that like a lot of that sort of idea comes out of like comfy, because there's no nodes in this,
Yeah.
so it's not like it's like you got spaghetti wire everywhere. But I know like Kyber did their murder board, Flora, which was another tool that I took a look at a while back as theirs. That seems to be a trend that people are kind of playing around with. I don't know if the canvases are going to stick though, mostly because they underestimate how disorganized we are as users. Although I did notice in Patchwork, you could right click and have like, if you had a character tab, like, and you had like images all over the place, you could right click on that and they would all snap to that area. I'm like, very smart. Yeah. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I think that infinite canvas idea is a little bit intimidating to a lot of users that aren't familiar with that workflow. And I think there are far more people that aren't familiar with it than are. So.
Yeah, I still like Figma. I would love to have like a Midjourney plugin for Figma to generate right in there. I'd probably just use that, but it's is there anything that plugs into? I mean, I don't know if Flux has one. I feel like that's got to be coming somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I think that we are in API the all-in-one API platform. It's like, I have a platform that plugs into like you can generate on anything here via their APIs. And I don't know if that is going to stick, only because a lot of times, I don't know if you guys are playing around with any of those, but you can access like generations across any of the major platforms, but a lot of those intricate details are nerfed out. Like, so you can't do a lot of like, the controls that you're used to. So I don't know. Yeah.
Korea. I mean, that's the one that I find to be the most. If you're going to try everything, like that seems to be. I don't know. You mentioned Pinokio before. How is? What? Give us a little insight into. Are you using that a lot or no?
Yeah, that actually. So Pinocchio's fun and cool. Okay, I got to do the caveat here. So Pinokio essentially is, if you go to pinokio.computer, it's a shell that you can install on your machine that will then access all of like the open source tools that are out there and very easily install them onto your computer, and you can use them right on your machine. So anything from like a UI, or if you want to use like a face swapper, or you want to use any of like the kind of the latest and greatest that's coming out of face poke was in there very quickly.
Okay.
Here's the thing that I have to caveat. So and this is the thing that everyone always gets a little bit worried and sketched out about, is that when you install Pinokio, you have to bypass your Windows security, or if you're on a Mac, you have to run a scary terminal command. Because the program itself is not signed certified. I talked to the guy about this, and there's like thousands of us that use Pinokio. They're not doing anything particularly nefarious. It's just the guy doesn't want to sign security, or he doesn't want to sign the security certificates to Apple and Microsoft. So it's technically kind of a hack, thing. So listen, I understand if anybody's just like, I'm not doing that. Like, so I totally get that. But it is probably the easiest way to install things like, let's see, do I have it up right now? Let's see, Face Fusion.
I've got it up. I've got it up. Go ahead.
Yeah,
You keep talking. I'll share it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So like, it's the easiest way to kind of explore and play around with these tools if you're not great with, dealing with GitHubs and down. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So, so inside of Pinokio, again, like, let's see, what do they got in there? Video Composer, Echo Mic. Yeah, Clarity Refiner is the new one that's kind of like magnific, but maybe free. And these are all of the like open source tools available, and they're updating constantly. Anything that comes out, they're like, okay, we'll throw that up there. So, and then from there, it's just a matter of like, can your machine run it? So,
yeah, that's the other thing, which is definitely you learn that quickly in the AI game, whether your machine is good or not. I did with my M1.
Yeah, Face Fusion I think is one that does really well. That one right there. So that's a really great face swapper that generally you can run on your Dell Potato, especially if you're doing images. Like your M1 can probably handle a video on that. So that's Pinokio is great.
This is very interesting because it's like, is it node based within Pinokio, like Comfy UI, or totally different?
It's kind of a weird. It looks like your most basic like UI of all time. It looks very utilitarian. But yeah, no nodes or anything. Just like input image here, a bunch of sliders that you sort of have to play around with to figure out what you want to do. Into like how much influence, reference, all of that stuff you want to have. So it's a lot of the stuff, because it is open source, it works, but it doesn't necessarily look pretty. So
got it.
Yeah,
got it. I think we should probably hit on some of the bigger news of the week. You said you've been sort of down deep in it. I've personally been there myself. I think Drew's in it a little bit. What are the first impressions on Sora?
First impressions were not great. I think like a lot of us were. For 10 months we saw a thing that was like, this is amazing, and then we got it, and it was like, this is not so amazing, and now I got to pay $200 to generate a person in there, and there was a lot of like and buts that were in there. So I ended up taking a bunch of days to I paid the stupid $200, and all right, let's see what we can do here. Because it was and admittedly, to their credit, it is like $200. You burn through your credits, and then you're on unlimited on the relax mode, which I have found has not been any slower than it was.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the typical time you're finding for relax mode?
So
or is that the same mode that you get with the Plus users?
Maybe. That might be right, because it might be priority queue when you're in the pro mode. But I was on the pro mode on launch day and a couple of days after, and the site was probably getting hammered. So I probably wasn't even really. I mean, in my first video, I noted that it was like 20 minutes for that first generation. It's nowhere near that now. Like, even having burned through all of my credits. A typical generation is around 2 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So it's really not. It's pretty okay. I think it's still. I just did a video on the video to video aspects of it. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff when you have to wrest control from Sora. What I've noticed is that on the image to video side, it does not. It kind of acts like Midjourney's image referencing, in that like you provide Midjourney with an image reference, and it's going to be like, it's not going to give you like a one-to-one, or it's going to be like, oh, I see what you're going for there. I'm going to go ahead and do my own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how Sora works with their image referencing. And I think that's what initially was super frustrating to people, is that, you know, we come in with our intricately designed, you know, Midjourney compositions, and like it's like I've for hours I've mastered, this is the exact image that I want to have like come to life, and then you pop it in and it's just like, nah, I'm gonna go ahead and like, we're gonna do some deer in a forest. How's that sound? You're just like, that was on our
Quick
like,
cut.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I did find is that if you take your, you know, Midjourney image, bring it through any one of the other video generators, and then bring it into Midjourney, you get some really pretty stellar results out of it. So, or no, I'm sorry, Sora. You get some really pretty stellar results out of it. And as the days have gone by, we've been finding all kinds of like weird. There's a lot of controls in there that are kind of buried, like the blend controls.
Blend.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's super powerful.
Awesome.
The thing is, and I don't know if this is by design on their part, all of the controls within it are curve based, and the curves aren't labeled. So
No.
you're just kind of making curves, going like, I don't know what this is going to do. And I think that actually might be on design on their part, because I think they want to encourage experimentation. You know, to create. Look, Sora, I think that, you know, most of the demo stuff was like really like artsy and weird, and you know, and like, look how like, you know, Guggenheim Museum all of this stuff looks. And then, you know, getting down to brass tacks of like making a narrative, like, you know, it's like that's not what they're trying to aim for necessarily, I think, or at least like they're smart enough to know, like, look, it's not probably going to be able to do that right now. So instead, let's give you these unnamed blend tools and let you kind of play around with them to come up with weird effects. And indeed, as we've gotten into it, I think that there is control there. There's a lot of control there. It's just, you got to sort of figure out how to do it, you know?
Yeah, it was a big release. A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like to learn. It's a whole new. It feels like a whole new prompting structure,
There's
whole new
that
prompting style.
Yeah.
And you know, but blend is to me the differentiator. Blend and remix and recut. Like those are the differentiating factors. Blend, you can get so creative with that. I got addicted last night. I just did it for like 6 hours straight.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop. But
There was a cool one that I want to say Blaine Brown I saw put of like he had a image of, or he had a video of like a medieval castle, and then another video of like joggers in Central Park, and was actually managed to do a blend where it kind of looks like a drone shot that starts on the castle and comes down to like people jogging in front of the castle. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like okay. So I was just playing around with it. I posted a thing on X with it where I figured out kind of character consistency. If you were to take a Midjourney, or I'm sorry, a Sora character, remix that video out for a different action, you will get a totally different character, but still in the same style. And then you go through and you blend your original character with that second character, and like you now have a consistent character doing a different thing. Yeah.
I see.
The one thing that I have noticed, the more you beat up on Sora footage, though, the more processes you take it through. It does that like first frame or the final frame thing, where each iteration tends to look a little grainier and like a little softer, and like not quite as soft as it used to be, but you definitely see it definitely almost looks analog. In that like it's so many generations that it starts to kind of grain up a little bit. So
that might be. I'm having issues uploading some of the Sora stuff to Twitter where it's not like it's showing up like 480p on there. I'm like, well, I just upscaled this to 4K and Topaz. Why does it look like this? You know, so it's it's a weird one. But there's just things that what I would say on this too is like there's things on Sora you just can't do on the other platforms, right? Like I had a video of a guy on a motorcycle in the jungle. Coming towards us, like coming towards the camera, and then I blended it with a guy going the opposite way. And what it did was it gave me like this really crazy, like sharp 90-degree turn. Like it took a 90-degree turn, but then like it morphed the two. So there was a guy sitting on the bike facing forward and a guy sitting on the bike facing backwards. I'm like, interesting, cool, but if I hit remix, can I just remix that out? And then bang, then it's like you have like this crazy turn sequence, and it's like that's something you cannot do on, maybe Minimax can get something along those lines with the super fast motion, but it's like this is the differentiator, like these two tools here, because it's if it's a creative playground with them, to me personally. And
the other thing that I found too is in the recut feature, which again nothing else has. If you recut something that you like, you get that timeline, extend the timeline out, move your original clip to somewhere in the middle, and then text prompt on either side of it, you'll get consistent looks to your original clip. So it's almost like using your original clip as a style reference, which I thought was really fascinating. So that's pretty big in all honesty, that alone. So, I know that a lot of people have been having problems, and I think that on the text side of it, I think you're right. Like, it's a completely different text prompting style. I think we've all gotten a little bit lazy in prompting, in all honesty. Like, I mean, that's just universally like. So I did feel like when in my follow-up video on Sora, I really didn't want to. I was really trying to avoid doing like the hit piece because like there's so many people out there that are just doing like it sucks like videos.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like I don't want to go that direction. Like it doesn't seem like
clickbaity. It's too hyperbolic,
totally, So I mean, I think that I really wanted to spend some time figuring out, what's good about it. And I think in prompting, there probably is a way that you can get some. I know Dave Clark has been working on.
Yeah.
He's gotten some great outputs, and he just recently was saying like some of these are like 4 paragraphs long. So if you guys remember like those early like Tokyo Woman walking or like even the Paul Trello prompts, they were like walls of text. So I kind of think that that's right now what Sora is actually dying for. It really wants that. It doesn't want like puppy in the woods with a machine gun. So like you just have to, and I don't know if any of us have really cracked what exactly that is yet. If only OpenAI had some sort of like chat bot that could help with that.
It's
so weird.
Or if the coherence was just like an image gen tool that they owned. Like, what if we called it Dolly or something?
Interesting. I like that thought process.
I wonder, they're doing that 12 Days of Christmas. I mean, are we going to see an update from Dolly in that 12 Days of Christmas? That's kind of been on my mind. I don't know, but
I was convinced that Sora was either going to be on the first day or the last day. And the fact that they just came out swinging with it on day 3, I have no idea what's coming up next. I mean, what was day 1? Day 1 was
01. Was it the 01?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and so I really thought it was going to be 01 bookmark, and then bookmarked with at the end it was going to be Sora, or I thought it was going to be ChatGPT with Vision, which they also did on day 1, and then Sora at the end. So we're sort of in this weird no man's land for me. Like I have no idea what they're gonna announce.
What is your power rankings with these AI video tools right now? I mean, what? Do you have one that's sort of like your go-to at the moment, or do you kind of treat them as like use case dependent?
Use case dependent, but I do think that there's and I never get into tiery stuff. So Minimax is definitely the crowd favorite. Like anytime I mention them on the channel, it's just like yes. And those guys, I gotta say, I gotta give it up to Melon and the Minimax team because they were probably I think they've been the only video generator that I've seen that has managed to do the transition from everything's free to we got to pay for stuff, guys, and I don't know, flawlessly. They're still heroes. I don't know. Generally and I'll go back to old school Pika days, but when Pika was it's free, and then they were well, you got to pay now, and everyone was just screw you, Pika. I mean, Minimax managed to look like a champion all the way through that whole thing, so congrats to those guys. They all have different kind of looks and vibes. I also like Kling a lot. I like Runway. That is definitely really useful, especially when you add in the Act 1 component into it, and it's so fast. Like,
So fast.
I mean, it's crazy how fast that thing is. And I like I'm actually going to dive into after we finish this up, I'm going to dive into Luma to really deep dive into their new
Photon.
Yeah, Photon. Yeah, I'm gonna dig into that. So
It's cool. It's interesting.
yeah,
It's different.
Yeah. That's what I love. That I love having like options on on how things will, because I still go back to the fact that like AI video does not need to. I know that the trend is always like, how are you gonna make Hollywood movies off of this? I'm like, it doesn't really happen.
That's right.
It can do its own thing. Like it should do its own thing. So. I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm too old for that. Like, so like, I mean, there should be some young kid out there that's like making some like crazy thing that
What
we
are-
did not expect.
What are you most excited about for 2025? AI speaking, Gen AI.
I would say the orb, of course.
Yes.
And I think the convergence of 3D into our space. Like, I think that's going to be. And I've been saying this for a while now. I don't think that you need to go out and learn Blender or Studio Max. I mean, my caveman head cannot handle like that to begin with.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that you should probably pick up some basic ideas on how that UI works, at least just in a very light, like do a 101 YouTube course on Blender. A 10-minute intro to Blender class, just to kind of get your head wrapped around what that's going to be. Because I think that that's going to be a pretty big thing coming up in 2025. So I always do go back to that whole thing of like, when is control too much control, right? Because we always talk about that, like, oh, I want this, I want to be able to move the camera here, I want to be able to do this, blah, blah, blah. At what point are you now on a timeline doing keyframe animation? You know what I mean? That's control. Those tools exist already. Like, go learn 3D animation software then. So there is a point that we're going to hit where you've got the simplicity of the thing and the control of the thing, and there's going to be a sweet spot that we hit there, but there's still going to be a crew that's just like, but what about, and like you push it over, and
of course.
Yeah, suddenly we're just.
I feel like that's already the case, kind of. Like, I know we talk about updates to Midjourney all the time, but you'll go just, I think habitually, like we'll start to do things for a while, and then we've completely forgotten about a feature. That we haven't used in a long time. And it's just like, there's actually a lot here.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, when you think about all the different ways you could prompt, for example, right? There are just so many different things you could do.
Yeah.
And so, I think you're absolutely right. There is a sweet spot. And I think that's also, an interesting conversation, kind of going back to what Rory said about piecemealing it together. And that's why it's great to kind of get in early on some of these tools, because it doesn't feel like such a lift when there is, the small changes, but even the big changes, right? I mean, that rocks me even when there's a big change. Like when V7 drops, I'm gonna feel like panic for a moment.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm not feeling the panic that somebody would. That's just like, oh, okay, now's the time. That I gotta start learning this stuff.
I'm actually probably coming into 2025. I think I'm probably going to do a couple of like intro classes. I need to do some revisions on actually even the Midjourney videos. Like I still get a lot of like.
They get so outdated quick.
Yeah. Well, there's like, I have like this one that's like prompting in Midjourney, but it's like version 5.1, and people are still like watching it, and I'm like, it's still back.
I know.
Like, yeah, it's just like,
But you're not taking it down.
I'm not taking it down.
It's staying there.
That. Uncle YouTube does not like it when you do that. So it stays up for the historical record.
Hey, you know what? Let's talk about YouTube for a second. I think this is fascinating too. So obviously you talked about your journey with YouTube a little bit. I was reading some story, I think it was from like Curious Refuge. You did some sort of interview or article with them. Okay. And you were talking about sort of like, I guess you were involved doing a little bit of music stuff, and you kind of changed your content. But like, give us some idea of like, maybe from a creator standpoint, what works on YouTube? What, do you have tips? Because I still think, and even Rory and we were talking, and Rory especially, Rory's just always on YouTube. I give him shit because he's sort of like a Gen Z with YouTube guy. Like he'll watch it on his like TV at home. I'm like,
cable.
I don't even do that.
Like cable. Yeah.
But I think like to the point, like it's still one of those places where it feels like there's some green grass there. Like, what are some of the lessons you've learned? What are some like tips along the way? Like anything that you can share with the audience?
I would say like if you are doing, in our case, like if you're, or our case, like I think that those, if you're doing shorter form content right now, so if you're doing like, if you're say doing an AI film trailer, or you're trying to do like AI, you take Midjourney images, animate them, and do something with it, don't do them in on YouTube main. I would do shorts on all of that stuff right now. So and then that's just the grind part of it. And then
Did they extend shorts too? Isn't that
they
like
did, up to
3 minutes now? Or
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
I don't actually personally play around with shorts, so that's just just more work.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so I don't feel like doing that. And any to be honest, and like just to bash on this for a second, but any of those, like, take your long form content and throw it through this AI thing and it will make an instant short, like those don't work. So and on top of it, I think that when you're going through the shorts feed, you like you spot it in a second, you're just like, like I don't want that, I don't want that AI edit. So I would look at it that way. Other than that, with YouTube's such a weird, fickle beast. You can end up getting, a hit, and then double down on whatever hit. Like the next video is like 4 videos. 4 videos. You're just like, what? I just had the hit. Everybody liked it. So I mean, I guess if I have any advice, it really is just kind of keep going at it. Like, figure out a schedule that works for you. Be it once a week. I think that was where I started. Was like just once a week. Try to make the best content that you possibly can, and just keep at it. So the early on, and I'll say, like, that was one thing that, again, I think from having guitars, playing in bands and all of that stuff, early on, I made a real effort to make sure that I responded to every comment. That's gotten much harder now. I actually really can't do it as much, but I would drive myself insane, like writing like long detailed responses back to everybody, because to me it was like like from like playing in punk rock bands, it was like, I'm not on the stage, we're all on the stage, like we're all together, and I'm gonna hang out and drink beers with you guys afterwards, we're gonna cheer on the next band, and so that was kind of my mentality with YouTube, was like I'm gonna answer every comment, I'm gonna make a personal connection with every single person it's as the channel has grown, that's become less possible, but I think that that's part of it as well. It's just making a real, like, there's always a real person that's watching this. Hi, person out there that's watching to here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing. There's a real person there though that's watching this. So just acknowledge that, respect that, and make that connection, and then that person will probably come back and watch again. So,
Love that point. I think that's very relatable for both of us. We actually did an episode, was that 2 weeks ago now, Rory, where we were talking about, basically just like growing organically on social, what we learned in that process, because we both really started leaning into the AI stuff. But, as like you grow, it becomes harder to do. It's less scalable. But at the beginning, it is so crucial, because what you're trying to do is establish like that core base of people that will follow you through, those first couple steps, right? And kind of build around that in terms of people telling other people, right? Like, so it's that network effect that you're trying to capture, but at some point it does become a little bit unscalable, right?
I also think that, like, the other, if there's like one big thing, it's like your audience are not idiots. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so many of those people came in to the AI gold rush YouTube space, like with like ChatGPT will make you $700 a week. It's like, no, it will not.
No.
That is not going to happen. And I mean, those guys are going to lose credibility in just a second. Those guys have already all lost. There's a new crop of them coming in, but whatever. They die off very quickly. And the other part of it too is that, like, I think that part of the thing that I sort of branded the channel on is just like, well, two things really. I play with all the tools. Like, almost every video that I do, I'm hands-on, like, getting into the thing. I'm never just going to say like, oh, like, sometimes I have to, because it either hasn't been released or for time purposes, but really rarely. It's always like, oh, here's a new thing. I made a thing with it. Here's how I made it. This is what it looks like. And then on top of it, sometimes it's good. I have no problem talking about where it falters either. It's like, you have to be honest. Like, there are so many of those guys that are out there. It's like, this thing is the best. This is the greatest. And like, I don't want, like, you have to show that the realism of this stuff. It's like, I have no problems being like, this took me 100 rolls, but it finally got here. Like,
People need that though, because it's, I think, there's a lot of people that are guilty of putting up exceptional work but like that doesn't document the actual, something like Dave, for example. Like you don't know how many, for something for, the things that he's done either commercially or just for social. You don't know how many still images were created to get to that point, how many runs, how many edits, how many, it looks like, oh yeah, Dave pushed a button and there's, this cinematic 2-minute masterpiece, but it's like there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than that. So I think it's good that you share that because you have to.
I'm going to talk a little out of school on this one, so hopefully I don't get in too much trouble about this. But Dave did say, I haven't seen it, but Dave did say his, like going back to what we were talking about before, his V1 of that Coke commercial was completely different than what ended up there. So there was like essentially that job was at least done twice. You know what I mean? Like so however much he generated up in order to create his first thing. Look, it's a major commercial TV spot. Of course he's going to go through revisions. Of course he's going to go through client revisions. But, conceptually at least, it was a completely different thing than what we ended up seeing. So I
think there was 10 to 15. I think it was 10 to 15,000 stills just for that, which was 60-second spot. Which again puts it in perspective. It's somewhat similar to the typical production process. It's just a different way to do it. It's still going to take the long route, revisions, fine tuning, editing, going back and forth, probably self-flogging for a while, and then you get to that end point. But I think it's it's good that I like that. I think that's what drew me into your content on like the first couple Midjourney videos I watched was just like he's being real about it. He's not BSing. Like you're being real, you're saying where it falters, you're saying where it gets weird, so it's it's the adult, the story as old as time with social media. Just be authentic, right? Like be yourself, tell the truth, like
completely. And I think that's it provides a level of like I think I've kind of become the jokey AI guy, I'm like the dad jokes. It's kind of like the other part of my brand, and that's something that look, when everything is perfected, I'm going to be out of a job because what am I going to make fun of? What I mean? I have to be able to make jokes about six fingers and all of that stuff. So it's important.
It is, and it's good to remember where we came from.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
True. Very true.
Where it all started.
Yeah,
but it's been an interesting ride, man. Like I said, it's been nice when it felt like there was no one putting this stuff out there to have someone like you to be okay. There's a community to be had here. There's someone to talk to about this or listen to or at least have fun with because I'll never forget the day when it was like I was looking for something and I couldn't find it on Midjourney. I'm like, have I surpassed where YouTube is? Like, have I gone weirder?
Hard to
than
do,
YouTube? Yeah, right. It was like, but it was early, but I was trying some really crazy stuff. It made no sense, but it was just funny that again found your channel for stuff like this where it was like, this is awesome. Like, there's someone thinking about it in a way that I'm like excited about it too. Mm-hmm. So that was again, I'll thank you again for creating the content because it's good because you know. This is a reason.
Well, let's give the channel a little plug here. So this is at Theoretically Media on YouTube, right? Looks like
bad branding, by the way. It's like 9 syllables. I've
heard it's kind of like the first letter, last letter of your first name.
True.
But Theoretically in Media.
Oh, where is it?
I don't know, But yeah, man. So Tim here's got 130,000 subscribers, 225 videos up. This guy's got some stuff here covering everything from Sora, Leonardo, Kyber, Midjourney, Flux. I'm just scrolling the feed here. I mean, everything. Luma, Dream Machine. So like, if this is your space, which it should be if you're listening to this podcast, definitely encourage you checking it out. Give them a sub. Say hi. It is great content. So props to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us, man. That was an awesome conversation. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for jumping on with us and nerding out for a bit. Again, follow Tim on YouTube. He's also on X. I just saw you there. Gave you a follow. Make sure you follow him there as well. We're super grateful that we get to talk to people like you as we move forward into 2025, as we get more and more cool stuff to play with.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild next year. I feel like we're still heading up on the roller coaster. We haven't.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so, yeah.
As is YouTube duty here, like and subscribe. I think that's the idea. Yeah. Both channels. Yeah. I mean, happy holidays, gentlemen. If we don't speak,
absolutely.
And then I guess we'll continue the ride next week, Drew.
We'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for joining us.
Later.
Thanks for having me.